It's getting very dark and cold and depressing kind of weather we're having. It's November, and I'm just thinking about a particular series that I used to watch. It was called Band of Brothers, and it follows a young officer called Dick Winters. He's an officer who fought in the invasion in Normandy invasions in the Second World War, and I think about the time where it's about 48 hours before D-Day, and himself and his company of paratroopers, they're getting briefed up and they're getting battle prepared. They're doing training and they're getting ready for the invasion, and they cover everything. They're briefed. He's been briefed on his orders. He has briefed his men on what to prepare for. They've gone over maps. They've done reconnaissance. They've done training flights. Even from his training flights, he's intelligent enough to figure out roughly how far across the channel they're traveling and roughly what areas of northern France that they might land in. And despite all that, when they get in the planes, they cross the channel, and despite the fact that through heavy anti-aircraft flak and fire, the planes are sent all over the place. They're way off course. They're jumping out of burning airplanes, and despite the fact that he's lost his when he lands in the middle of a dark forest, in the middle of the dark, he's lost his rifle, he's lost his equipment. He's running around this forest playing hide and seek, looking for the rest of his colleagues. And despite all that, one private comes up to him and says, "Are we lost, sir?" And he just nonchalantly says, "We're not lost, Private. We're in Normandy." And to see that confidence in somebody, you have to say, where does he get that from? I suppose when you think about it, nothing can challenge your control and your confidence more than finding yourself at the edge of a battlefield or in a battle. There's no way you could test your confidence and your control any further than that. And when I think about battles, I think about what's happening in the Ukraine war. I think about the two lads at the beginning of the war. I podcasted about them. It's February. They're coming out of lockdown. They're sitting in their apartments. Life is good. And then suddenly they realize that their country has just been invaded. And in those hours of panic, they suddenly have to realize that they can either run or fight. And in the space of days, they're signing themselves up into the Ukrainian army. In a matter of days, they are getting the most basic weapons training and tactical training and preparation. And in those weeks, they have seen the enemy. They've been shot at by the enemy. They have shot at the enemy, and potentially they could have killed the enemy, or they would have seen their colleagues being killed. And I think about the weeks and the months afterwards where they've successfully routed the enemy out of Kiev, stopped their columns getting to Odessa, the fight to liberate Kherson, the fight to liberate Liman, all very positive, very positive. And after months of that warfare, those two young men would have been feeling at the top of their game, super confident, super in control of themselves, knowing exactly what needs to be done. Then in May, June of this year, there was talk of a counterattack. They were going to cross the Dnieper River. They were going to go into Zaporizhia, and it was very confident. They were saying, "Oh, in days we'll have taken Tokmak, Melitopol, and in a couple of weeks or months we'll be in Mariupol, and we will be celebrating on the coast of the Sea of Azov." And as we saw in late August, September, there was indeed such a counter-attack. They did push. um, However, they came into, they had everything. They had the equipment, they had the soldiers, they had the reconnaissance, they had the preparation done. All they had to do was to advance. And as soon as they went into their advances, they were met by minefields and the Surovikin line, which is a line of defense that was designed by a particular Russian general who's no longer with them now. They pushed through the first line of defense. They managed to get in through the second line of defense, and the third line of defense was a bit of a challenge, but they managed to break through to it. However, after days of pushing, finally they took the village of Robotina, which wasn't even mentioned in the maps way back in July, August. The frustration that must be there to push so hard and to get so not to get very far into it. It is quite it's quite how would you say, it's quite a bang to your confidence. And now we're coming into the wet season again, the winter. And just there last week, a Ukrainian general has come out with a report. He's the general who's responsible for the counter-attack, and he explains why they failed to push through. Overall, he said that we couldn't get the beautiful breakthrough that we were expecting to get way back in August. The reason being that the area is saturated with mines. Secondly, the drone warfare that has been so critical for the success of Ukraine. The Russians are now finally catching up with their own drone warfare technology. It hasn't surpassed it, but it's enough to keep the Ukrainians at bay. Thirdly, the line, the battlefield line, isn't just in the south. It's 1,300 kilometers long, and there has to be brigades every so many miles up and down that line. And the Russians know this, and the Russians knew that they were going to be pushing into Zaporizhia. So what they started to do was diversionary warfare, where they started the counterattack is going on in southern Ukraine. So the Russians started attacking Avdiivka, which is way up northeast of Ukraine, way away from that. And that means the Ukrainians would have to divert some of their resources up there. Again, the fight in Bakhmut is still quite intense, and Vuhledar is again coming up. And it seems like the Russians have this new technique where they send in their meat waves first. They take hold of the land, and as soon as they get occupation, they start digging in. And it's not just trench warfare; they're actually digging tunnels now. They're getting right deep into the ground, so that way you can't touch them with the drones, and you can't really see what's going on underneath. Like so, coming into this winter again, it's looking like it's going to be a long-term war. And when I think about those two lads, if they're still alive, I pray to God that they still are. They're down, and what can you do to address that? And the best I can come up with is, firstly, when you're depressed or you're down, it's important to be able to express to everybody else that you're down. It's all right to complain. It's all right to have a rant, even to cry. Like it's a pressure valve. You need to release that pressure. You need to let go, and once you do that, you feel a little bit better. Nothing has changed, but at least you've released, and at least you've accepted the fact that the situation is as it is. When you're being pushed around, I think I said it in the last podcast. If you're if you are down, it's because you're either being overwhelmed with work or somebody is pushing you. And if it is indeed the case where you're being pushed around, you can either go with that push, you can push back. Although in this situation, it's not going to do it's if you're successful pushing back, it only means you're going to have even more control over a situation that you have very little control over anyways. um you can just walk away from it, that's not an option, or you can fall over and get hurt, and that they're not good options either. So when you think about it, progress is slowed right down, but at least um, you might be kitten crawling from one landmine to the next landmine, but at least you're kitten crawling in the right direction. You're there's still progress there. You're still getting somewhere with it. Very little, but you're still getting somewhere. And secondly, the Russians might have as many fires up and down the line as it is, but the more fires you put out, the less fires people you care about will have to deal with. So, times are dark, but you're heading in the right direction and you're doing the right thing. And there's nothing else you can do but soldier on. That's all I have to say. Take care.